we're doing it live. We haven't had these conversations. I got to build an AI health coach or AI longevity coach that's hyper personalized. How exactly do I do that? How do I make sure it doesn't go off the rails and provides relevant recommendations that a user will actually adhere to?
So the first thing you can see here is that in the dataset configuration, I can filter it by a user cohort. We have some examples here like fitness enthusiasts, and it'll basically it'll store conversations. I don't think I pressed this big red button yet. And this is actually the whole point of this page, is that it's going to run an evaluation, and this uses Deep Eval's evaluation toolchain to talk to OpenAI. The coach is going to say, I want to learn about this user's habits, or like sleep, diet, exercise, for instance. It runs through the evaluation loop and it gives kind of a score about how well this is doing. You're building these interfaces, you're creating a data set of what chats are good, what chats are bad, what's wrong with them.
Error analysis is the single most valuable activity in AI development and consistently the highest ROI activity. If we don't understand ourselves, how can AI understand us? The feature of AI alignment is epistemically Hey everybody, welcome to the ABCs for Building the Future podcast. I am Robert. I'm joined with my co-host and co-founder on Epistemic Me, Jonathan. And today we have a build in public update. We're going to be going over a core feature we've identified and articulate its value prop and demo it. It's called the SDK Playground, targeting at our hypothesized ICP of a developer tasked with building AI coaches, and in particular, hyper-personalized health and longevity AI coaches. In addition, we did a revamp of our landing page / website, where we've totally threw away the whole design previously, and we went for more of a futuristic design with a new color palette, inspired by a lot of user interviews and learnings that we've had in the past few months. So we're going to actually go through it. It's already live, but we're literally going to go through it and line by line do some content scrubbing to make sure marketing meets development well. So awesome. Jonathan, do you want to give a quick word or two on what is the SDK Playground for the audience to be able to understand it? And then do you want to take me through some of the updates? I know in Slack, I was seeing a lot of your daily stand-up updates seem pretty meaty. So I'm very excited to hear this.
Yeah. So it's the coordination of a few different pieces. And I think that's why the Slack updates are like a working plan for me to implement as I go and remember what the next most important thing to do is. But the SDK Playground is just a tool that introduces somebody to the Epistemic Me SDK. And you can basically see it in the form of conversational interface between a coach and a user, one user at a time, that you can model different users and look at a conversational interface. And then you can inspect, you can see how our API works, the SDK works with the API to extract beliefs during the conversation, and how you can use the create and update dialectic techniques to manage this dialectic between a coach and a user. Ultimately, it's also a training ground. So you're training the coach to act in a way that they can understand the user better incrementally. It meets a learning objective, and yeah, so we can just jump into it.
Let's jump into it. And for the audience, while Jonathan's pulling up, this is a true build in public update where I haven't seen this, and I'll be seeing it at the same time that you're seeing it. And then on the website update as well, we're doing it live. We haven't had these conversations. So super build in public, very raw.
Nice. Cool. So this is the dashboard for the SDK Playground, and it's very much a work in progress, but let me walk you through it. So I think in previous iterations when I built that, I've worked a little bit from a bottom up perspective in terms of, okay, what's the best way to demonstrate the Epistemic Me SDK and show people what we're doing here. And in this case, I took what I call more of a top down value centric approach to, if I am a developer and I'm building an AI chatbot, how can I use the SDK? So I'm trying to make it the most useful that it can and meet the existing best practices of using conversational evaluation tools to train a coach. And part of that was to get the data set configured. And I'm using the same data set configuration as DeepEval, which is an open source evaluation library that I found really useful. And so we're like using DeepEval and then writing our own evaluation metrics on top of it that are for personalization. And so the first thing you can see here is that in the data set configuration, I can filter it by a user cohort. We have some examples here like fitness enthusiasts, and it'll basically it'll store conversations. And then there's the router intent, which is when the AI coach is interacting with a given user, it interprets an intent that the user has. So maybe they want to do some research or analysis or something like that, and you can filter for conversations that look like that. And yeah, then you can just kind of browse through some different example conversations. These are like really simple. These are all generated, but I'll be importing more substantial conversations. And so the structure of the conversation is like the back and forth between what the user is saying and the coach is saying. So I have these kind of like chat bubbles here that indicate that. And these are just, I just have like one or two turns. They're called turns within the conversation. A real dialogue would have multiple turns. And I'm really thinking about the case we talked about, Robert, with like the SOAP loop, like where user uploads data. We ask subjective questions about the user to learn about them. We populate a belief system about that user. We make a recommendation, and then the user selects a plan for that recommendation. All makes sense so far?
Yeah. Could you real quick for the audience that didn't catch the Bishoy pod, define SOAP real quick? I think you started with, yeah, if you could define that real quick just for the audience, because I think that'll be key for them understanding our design pattern here.
Yeah, it's I guess a term used like that a doctor might use in an evaluation of a patient. So subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. And yeah, and it just with some language for how we were already thinking about the cycle of a user uploading some data. It could be a PDF with information about them. It could be the health data or whatever. That's the objective profile. Subjectively, we're going to inquire about various subjective qualities of what's going on based on the habits and this kind of thing, underlying beliefs. And then the assessment and that's the recommendation system from like machine learning point of view. We assess, we recommend, and then we choose a plan with the user so based on what they actually want to take from the recommendation.
Cool. So thanks so much for explaining that. And real quick to level set for the audience, this is a core feature of most developer facing tools, and certainly Epistemic Me is a developer facing tool with the outcome of hyper personalization. And right now in the niche of health and longevity focused AI coaches. So when a developer comes to our website, ideally what they see is this SDK playground with some more design sprinkle in here where they could really see, oh, this is for them. Oh, this SDK helps them get the best dialectics for the best hyper-personalized experiences for the health and longevity use cases for their end user. And also getting familiar with how the SDK playground will help them be a training grounds and simulation grounds to get the best dialectics or turns, as Jonathan was saying. And then on the right, you can see the data model or the schema. So getting a developer very familiar, like they go into our page and I'm imagining they see, oh, this is for them. I got to build an AI health coach or AI longevity coach that's hyper personalized. How exactly do I do that? How do I make sure it doesn't go off the rails and provides relevant recommendations that a user will actually adhere to? That will be useful. So then they see this, they're like, oh, this is really cool. This is for me. And then they get very familiar with our data model. And hopefully they go to our GitHub and pull it down and start playing with it after they play with it through the SDK playground as a first sort of value step in their journey. So with that context, additional question here, could you explain the data model on the right?
Yeah, the context on the right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So right as the conversation is happening, this is what the user might see in the chat browser. But beneath that, the chatbot's going to have access to context about the conversation and about the user. And so we're just scaffolding information is going to be there. I think of particular importance is this placeholder for the belief system. And say in this interaction here, the user asks a question, the coach gives a response. The coach may respond with a question at that point to learn about the user to actually like fill in beliefs, or it may extract it from like whatever the user is asking. They have some previous context from before. And that's one of the main goals here is just like on a turn by turn basis that we can look at the beliefs that are extracted and we can see towards our learning objectives. The coach is actually the one that's going to have learning objectives. And the coach is going to say, I want to learn about this user's habits for like sleep, diet, and exercise, for instance. And that's the coach's learning objective. And then it's going to ask questions about those habits and it's going to extract beliefs about that involve those habits.
Got it.
And
Very cool.
yeah, and
Sorry.
so I don't think I pressed this big red button yet. And this is actually like the whole point of this page is that it's going to run an evaluation, and this uses Deep Eval's evaluation toolchain to talk to OpenAI, and then it evaluates whether the conversation achieves its goals. In this case, I've created 3 custom evaluations: one for user identification, one for belief evidencing, and another for belief verification. And then it runs through the evaluation loop, and it gives like a score about how well this is doing. And so the whole point about this interface here is that you can test new prompts for your coach and see if they return better responses and that the conversation improves so that the evaluation metrics improve. So it's an improvement loop to train the AI coach.
Very cool. So the goal is developer tasked with building a hyper-personalized AI coach goes to our website, sees this SK playground, they click run evaluation based on some pre-existing data we populate that speaks to their use case, like you have here. And then they could see, oh, this is the thing that will help my coach be better and learn more about users and get into that loop of perfecting these evals. Is that right? Am I hearing that right?
Yeah. In this visualization here, you just want to see these numbers go up and the bigger surface area on the radar graph be visualized. The better that is, the better your coach is according to your evaluation metrics.
Cool.
And these are specific, like you can have a lot of different training metrics for a conversational chatbot or a coach. And these are specific to some of the personalization metrics we talked about using epistemic me for. Yeah. If you just have somebody come, let's say you don't have a self-identified fitness enthusiast yet, but you're just talking with somebody, can you start to identify from their demographics or from the belief structure what user cohort they belong to, and start serving them content and questions that meet that identification? So that's one of the, I think, easy to conceptualize goals that you don't need to know much about philosophy to get the idea. And then you're just starting to disambiguate what user cohort somebody's in. Now we're like looking at some of the different belief extractions. And so we're extracting beliefs in context here, and then we're going to be trying to learn about the user. So belief evidencing means like, how well do we understand how the user evidences their own beliefs? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I guess I gave an example like in health. Let's say we're planning to recommend a plan that recommends a certain, like we were just talking about 4x4s and improving VO2 max. So let's
Yes.
say we're going to want to back into like, how did this user come to the belief that doing 4x4s will increase their VO2 max? Is it some socially geared evidence? Is it something that they have read papers about? And how do they ground their own beliefs? Maybe they're an athlete and they just know, yeah, when I do 4x4s, like my VO2 max goes up. It's like very experiential, right? S- So understanding how people think about these beliefs and how they evidence them is one of the goals of understanding users.
Yes. And that leads into being able to recommend the next best thing or ask the next best question to learn more or give them the best habit change or recommendation for exercise, diet, whatever the use case might be, or the user. Did I get that
Y-
right?
Yeah, exactly. Because the more you understand how they ground their beliefs. You can ask better questions, just like you just said, and then the recommendations that you can give are going to meet how they think about these beliefs and more with more fidelity.
Yeah. Just for the audience, one of the ways that I ground our use case is think about a real fitness coach, like a human one that you would call up and ask them to coach you. Why would you go to them? It's because in between knowing that you should be healthier, sleep better, better diet, exercise more, in between that and actually doing it, the knowledge is like a lot of uncertainty. So you go to a professional, or in the doctor use case, you go to a practitioner with a license, and then you learn from them and they learn about you to be able to understand your underlying beliefs around health. A good use case was my brother used to think, before I showed him some podcasts on sleep, he used to think that if he ate a lot of food right before bed, he would sleep better because he would have like the food coma effect. And so when I showed him scientific research that backed that, hey, when you eat right before bed, your body or your resting heart rate goes up because your heart has to work harder to convert that into useful energy. Now you're in a fed state. And so for my brother, he's a PhD in biophysics, super intellectual guy, but he didn't quite have that data point, especially not from the academic side. So when I presented that to him and I understood the root of his beliefs, the evidence was his experiential experience of, hey, I food coma at night if I eat right before bed. But he wasn't tracking restorative sleep. He didn't really know about that. And he wasn't tracking data over time, essentially, like his personal data. And then now I presented a new evidence point, and fast forward 2 months later, his sleep is better than ever in his whole life. So it literally transformed his life, just getting to the root of that belief. So basically, think about a fitness coach or longevity coach or influencer that has millions of followers. They cannot feasibly, from a human point of view, one-on-one coach every single person with their philosophy on longevity and their philosophy on health and how they might recommend diet, sleep, exercise, because they just don't, there's not enough infinite time out there, right? That's just not going to happen. So that's why the AI health coach that gets to the underlying belief of the user maximizes the learning rates around that to get to the evidence behind their beliefs. And then we evolve this belief system for the user. And then we can also see that by cohort, health conscious professional, or maybe pregnant women, or whoever the cohort is, so that the AI coach is hyper personalizing experiences. Okay. I just wanted to give that kind of more human example to give color context, Jonathan. And so you were,
That's great.
yeah. Um, Sorry, I saw you were pulling up some other things too. Did you want to go over those?
Yeah, I wanted to show because the idea here is to meet the best practices for making a chatbot, AI chatbot better, and then using the personalized evaluations on top of the existing ones. And I wanted to show you this was a really good article that was released just last week sometime about Field Guide to
I saw
Rapidly
your,
Improving AI Products. I
yeah,
sent it over to
really.
the Don't Die team. That
That's
was
right.
really solid. And
Yeah.
they so they recommend building your own, like every company that builds their chatbot should have its own sort of analysis tool that's like home built. You just pull up each of the conversations that are happening and then you analyze them. But he really put an emphasis on not using generic metrics, but letting domain experts review the conversations with you and then figure out like what the key errors are. And I think these are called critiques. So if you if we're looking at like a conversation that an AI coach is having with a health consumer, we would be looking at those, and we imagine there's maybe a doctor looking at it, maybe there's a health coach looking at it, any kind of
Yeah.
expert that can really add value into what's wrong. So the response that the coach is giving, and then we
Yeah.
work to fix those, right? And so these are some examples of error categorization in their use case here.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I thought, and then what they go on to show how then you can also make it easy for these experts to start to edit and curate. And so, like Deep Eval's Confident AI also has tools like this. But essentially, you're like, you're building these interfaces, you're creating a data set of what chats are good, what chats are bad, what's wrong with them. And I
Yeah.
wanted to bring these ideas into something that's easy to use for the SDK playground too. It's the basic idea what's going here, but I wanted to talk to you about some of the features I was thinking about adding and see if
Yeah.
we're aligned on all that.
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So that data viewer looks like key feature, right? To bring in that domain expert.
Right. And I think here you have the same kind of data. It's laid out a little bit differently. It can always change this. It, there's just like a set of conversations that you're wanting to sift through. And eventually these are going to be synthetic conversations. But then when we start having conversations with real users and we pull them in here, this is where we want to view it. And I think the word turn is like there's multiple turns per conversation is what the word means. And so I thought on each turn, we should have a way to create a critique and that we might consider even using epistemic me to create like personas of a- an expert doctor. And so the expert doctor says, these result, this response from the coach is not accurate. And that's my critique.
Mm, yeah.
And you remember that question, the paper that we read from, I think Stanford and Google that had that approach of
Yeah.
predicting user answers to questions?
Yeah. So some context for the audience. There was a paper that came out, if I remember correctly, that was a collaboration between Stanford and Google to they basically were trying to predict basically what the users would say next. And they had a series of role-based prompt, fine-tuned prompts where AI played a role of a psychiatrist versus a psychologist versus a behavioral specialist and many other roles around answering what does it mean to be human, essentially. I'll call it human expertise. And they were able to get how much was it? I know it was greater than 80, but I don't remember that number off the top of my head.
It's
Greater than 80%
like
accuracy.
85% accuracy in predicting answers. Yeah. From a trained data set.
Yeah. So basically, you're saying, Jonathan, perhaps we could build a feature with an epistemic me that's of that flavor to help the developer and the domain expert more easily run these evals. Is that right?
I think just think about the developer and think about those experts being there as like like a LLM version of a judge that can fill in for their experts before they're ready to hand it off to the experts. That's that's one idea I was thinking about.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You know what's really meta is if we built self models of the experts themselves with their own knowledge bases.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like we just use
Yeah.
epistemic me to create the belief
Oh,
system structures
oh,
of
that is what you're saying. Oh, yeah. I
yeah.
think that'd be super cool. Yeah, for sure. Like instead of a slightly generic fine tuned prompt engineer method, like why not make the expert based on their belief systems and their own knowledge base? Like that makes a lot of sense. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, so it could be a holistic tool that way because what the expert perspective is giving back is critiques, and they can look at the whole conversation and critique like that. The plan that the user ended up with here is they're not likely to stick with. For instance, that might be like a therapist level critique of a conversation, and we could have these different personas that offer you critiques and offer you ways to like make your evaluation score higher based on the like how it needs to be improved. So that's one idea, but I think what I really want to see here is that throughout the conversation, we can go turn by turn and the user can see like the context and the belief system evolving as the conversation is happening. So like at the beginning of the conversation, we maybe know no beliefs about a new user. And then as we learn more about them, the beliefs populate and we're in deeper context about the user. So that's one of the key things I'm trying to show in the SDK.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm now thinking about it with that lens of the data viewer that we're defining as that. sort of visualization where we could do the error analysis and bring in an expert very easily.
Yeah.
Mm, I think that makes sense. I wonder if it would be useful to developer if we had, here is not just the next best question to learn more about the user or the next recommendation, but what if we had, here's the top three and here are the scores and why? That might be interesting as well. So then they could see in that loop, like what were the other options and perhaps pick a different one, allow the expert to easily view a screen of, oh, these were the other options. I like this one better, even though that one was the one that shipped or was leveraged.
Yeah, I
What do
love
you
that.
think?
Yeah, because like that ranked choice. And
Yeah.
I think we could return from the SDK, like, here's some questions that you could ask and they're ranked. And they
Yeah.
could, you could, on a sort of per dialectic turn basis, you can give feedback on this question's better than this question, and so on.
Yeah. I'm really now thinking about it. And we'll add this article to the show notes. It's a really good article. Here's a quote from it. Error analysis is the single most valuable activity in AI development and consistently the highest ROI activity. And the whole thinking is if you could, instead of having an engineer talk to a doctor and be like, hey, how should we fine tune this prompt? Or what do you think of these turns slash dialectics, whatever you want to call them? How do you think they went? Just give the doctor or domain expert the tools to annotate these turns themselves. And so now I'm thinking about that user's experience, the doctor's experience, and how do we make it as easy for them as possible to provide their expertise? That's why I thought of the, hey, what if we just gave them the ranked list of questions we could have asked, but didn't, and then give some quantitative data as to why. So just opening up that conversation for a sec, maybe we could brainstorm how might we make their lives as easy as possible to help fine tune the AI.
So there's one thing that maybe the you build the developer annotation is one tool, but then there's other tools that let you curate the data set. So just just saying that once the data set's in good enough shape, you can just put it onto Confident AI or a number of other dashboards that like are already built for expert curation. So part of our job there is just to make it easy to create a good data set.
We're just taking turns. How would you rate that turn?
Right? There were a couple of
Um,
error corrections that
a little bit. I think I'd need to pull in a reading domain expert to tell me, or a podcast host domain expert to tell me. Don't switch being on mute while you're talking. Don't be on mute while you're talking. That this is how we would rate that. Cool. And any other thoughts to wrap up the SDK playground conversation, or anything else you want to talk about there or line up?
Yeah, I think it's in a good place to where you can see kind of like where it's at. But then I'd like to imagine the visual interface that is just like quickest time to value for our developer. And so I'm thinking about just like how to display the conversation and then annotate the conversation as a whole, especially the conversation as a whole. Just annotate it with here's what's wrong, here's how to make it better, kind of thing, where you can like auto generate some prompts for your coach that would improve it. But then I'm also thinking about especially the visualization of how beliefs are learned during over the course of an evaluation. And I was thinking a get diff type of basis, like where here's the belief system and when we started, here's the ones that were added, here's the ones that were removed, and you can just see what we learned about the user in a given session, the goal there. So those are the things I was thinking to focus on next.
Yeah, honestly, if we just get a visualization with some dummy synthetic data, get it in a prototype, like over to our ICP devs on the Don't Die side, we could probably rapidly get feedback without even hooking it up to anything real. Like, just see what is the thing that would get you to grok what we're doing as fast as possible and eliminate time to value. I think that would be a good path forward. Perhaps in our Wednesday call, we could brainstorm the viz a little bit more.
Cool. Yeah. And I think the whole goal, I think, with Dota is just to get them a baseline data set of synthetic data that the thing works pretty well. And it can demonstrate that we can go through one of those SOAP evaluations and the different contexts of their app. And like the semantic router that I was showing on the left hand side, you could
Yeah.
have one of those for biomarkers. You'd have one of those for their like don't die score. And so if a user goes in, they sync their data for the day, it creates their don't die score. That just kicks off a session, right?
Yeah.
And the user can choose to answer the like habit subjective questions or whatever, through a cycle every time the data is uploaded. And so the
Yeah.
semantic router on the AI coach, I think we can I think we can tangibly deliver value by having here's a synthetic data set, here's a way to train your prompts and make them better, and you just plug them in and then redeploy the app. That's where I'm trying to meet their development experience.
Cool. Yeah. We should get that up and running as fast as possible and get Greg in a meeting and show it. And I think that's the best way to move forward on that. So I'll action on that after the call. We'll coordinate on, let's just have a meeting on the calendar, come with a prototype. Because in the last EM Don't Die Team Sync, we talked about that as follow up. So we'll take that. Cool. Anything else on SDK Playground before we move into marketing meets development on the website?
Yeah, I think that's it for now. I think a design session on Wednesday would be great. Yeah.
I bet we could easily take, you had a really nice, the dialectic designer. I felt like at a high level, the lo-fi mocks were like, that's pretty good. Let's just hi-fi it and then
Yeah.
meet our website design. And that'll probably be pretty good.
You're just looking at cursive interpretation of my Excalibur draw. Yeah.
I think, yeah, it was good for showcasing the functionality and what kind of data you'd get. So I think we'll put a rev on it. So first off, I revamped our logo and made it more neon to match everything.
Oh, it's new. I wasn't there yesterday. That's cool.
Yeah. And it's now a fave icon. So now it's in the browser tab too. So it stands out. Although now looking at this, it probably needs to be more like there needs to be more pop with this. I'll do something with that later. I'm still going back and forth. I've just left this as a join the waitlist now to try to induce FOMO. And then I have a join our community secondary call to action. The tagline is on the hero section is understand user beliefs, hyper personalized experiences. And I moved our original, like very head grabber sort of tagline down here. If we don't understand ourselves, how can AI understand us? Because we're really trying to appeal to that ICP that we've been discussing this whole call, but also we want to appeal to a secondary ICP or perhaps even the first one who is mission or purpose driven in this age of superintelligence where everybody knows we have to solve AI alignment. Anybody working in AI definitely knows we have to solve it. We want to track those people and tell them we're looking to solve it. And also here, I was thinking about, we really want to show them how we're trying to solve it. So, okay, beliefs lead to hyperpersonalization. It's the toolkit for quantifying subjectivity and belief systems for true personalization to meet your users where they need you in real time. And then just this little FOMO area, and then this understated subtext to just talk through, oh, AI alignment, SEO, personalization, SEO. Cool little GitHub thing. Added the
Cool.
Don't Dot logo. Oh, actually, yeah, maybe I'll stay here. Let's go kind of section by section and let me get your feedback and I'll take some notes on the side here.
Yeah. And so I think one interesting thing about this is it's different. It's for a different audience than I think our last website was, which was like we were more for people trying to contribute to the open source project, the last one, but this one seems more geared at developer ICPs. And
Yeah.
my first thought reading this is it should say for conversational chatbots somewhere because
Okay.
like how else do we know who the audience is and what they're trying to add hyper personalized experiences to?
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Conversational chatbots. I'll make sure that's here. Maybe something like to really bring your conversational chatbots to life. Something like that here. I'll think through the copy, but that makes sense. That's good feedback. Any feedback on like this, the FOMO inducing elements of it's now in beta, join the waitlist? Thoughts on that? I'm really thinking about that. So when you click this, you go to a waitlist form, and this way I just get people into our CRM. And right now, because the website is targeted at that ICP, and we're not at a point where we have product led growth and SaaSifying things, like that'll be in a few months' time, fingers crossed. Once we get this rep in with AI Brian and hopefully some fast follows. That's why I'm thinking like putting people on a wait list is probably the best for now, so they could signal intent. And then I have this secondary join our community tab where we're really also trying to heavily curate our open source community. So I have a few additional things here because we went back and forth on, should we just toss the open source Slack into here or should we have an intake? And I think where I landed over the weekend when I shipped this was, let's have an intake because we want people that are there to really want to be there. And this early in the community, I think that's important. You don't want the wrong sort of ICPs. You want like heavily vetted. These are people that want to build the future with us and share our values. So on this, like I have some questions towards that. They could tell us what they're interested in, their intent, some like, what drew you to this? What would make this community meaningful to you? And that way we could vet intent coming in. Thoughts on any of that?
Cool. Yeah. I do like the community like intake funnel. I like that. But I feel like a little bit of an identity crisis here about who is the audience that we're talking to. Like
Mm,
on one hand, it's jumping to this is an open source project. Use it in your personalized chatbot today. I think if we're trying to have a conversion activity for the developer who wants to try an open source project when it's ready for them, then that's the form below, right? Yeah. And then the other person looking at this is you're a developer and you think this is interesting and will help us apply philosophy to AI and create hyper personalized experiences. It's those two different people, two different audiences. I'm, but I'm not sure that
mm,
comes across if you were to do user testing on it.
yeah. I'll test it with our current open source contributors and see what they think. I had another thought, and we can go back to the drawing board on this. I had another thought of maybe we have two landing pages, one for each, one for each ICP that's very clear it's for them. That's yeah, that's been hard for me to parse out because then on the go to market side for this, with hey, you're the AI health coach developer tasked with building this hyper personalized conversational chatbot for the health longevity use case. Perhaps we just have that as a different entity or something outside of epistemic me. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I'd love some riffing. Any thoughts on that? Like thoughts on two landing pages? And if so, we want to rip it out as a different entity then to package this product.
Yeah, I guess you haven't joined our community button. There's not a separate page for team and community or
Yeah,
the team page meant to be that? Because I don't know. Yeah, you can have a million landing pages on a given website asset.
yeah.
And here's the
So
link that we send developers, and here's the link that we send potential customers, and those are two different things.
yeah. Have you seen any good examples of that out in the wild?
I think they're usually, yeah, like different.
If okay.
Yeah, I guess like GitHub is usually the call to action for an open source project. If you want to start contributing, then there's contributor guidelines there.
Yeah.
And so I don't think there's anything wrong with having to join our community to funnel people to Slack. But yeah, the real call to
Mhm.
action for the developers, go to GitHub and check out the code and check out the contribution guidelines and start downloading and forking and stuff like that.
Yeah. I have it understated in here. I think the GitHub icon at this point is quite like people would see that they would know, oh, I
Yeah.
take care.
No, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw our stars went up by one. It might be a friend that I sent it to. But that's
I
fun.
think it
It's
could
fun
have
to
been the meeting
see.
I had today that I was telling you about.
Yeah, it could be that too. It's fun to just see this number go up though.
Yeah.
Now we have a very obvious target. That's cool. Okay, so I took some feedback on that. I'll do some research. I think that's my takeaway on how other open source projects with a product that they're trying to go to market with, how do they handle that? Is it two separate landing pages? I'll look for some inspiration. All right, moving on. I think this part probably doesn't need much.
Yeah. I think it'll be additive when we can add a case study there so that they
Yeah.
can see. If it doesn't say that we're using it with an AI coach, which is the most key thing to get across.
Yeah. I would like to actually show a screen, even like a GIF of AI Brian in action here. That's what I'm imagining in
Yeah.
the future. Once we actually have more users and reps through with it, I think that'd be really great.
Cool.
So that's maybe for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna make it happen. Starting with the Greg meeting this Friday. We'll figure it out. So I still love this question.
Yeah.
I think it's good. This signals like our intent. Actually, looking through this, I should probably make this our accent color just so it's different. What do you think of this section?
Yeah. So that's what I was thinking of the top section. The key thing to get across here is like, what do you mean by personalization? What's the thing I gotta have but in my chatbot, my conversational chatbot that I don't have now? And then I think this
Mm,
section starts to address it.
yeah, what I was hoping they get is that's why I started with this first, is not just like understanding your users better, it's understanding their beliefs. And like I want that, and I say belief you hear in the secondary say line. I want that to see the developer's thought of, oh, this is a different angle on personalization. So I'm hoping they see beliefs and then they scroll down here and then it's already in their heads that, oh, that's the difference maker with this and anything else. Any thoughts on the copy?
Let's see. So what are we comparing to? Current AI approaches versus AI plus epistemic me, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, this is where I think some like really strong positioning is would suit us well. Just to make it like clear, this is the old narrative, this is the new narrative kind of takeaway.
What would be the strongest is if we had, so actually what I was trying to, maybe we even, I don't know, what I was trying to do, skipping ahead here, I was trying to do this with this section and this, eventually we will just replace this with the SDK playground, but because that's not ready yet, I wanted the user to get an idea of what does it actually look like when it is with epistemic me versus without. And I generated this with our intern's help and it from this copy paste synthetic input. Basically, I wanted them to see this is the with without. This is the old way, new way. This is what I intended with this section, but I'm now thinking maybe this is too far down. Maybe it should be right here. What do you think?
The with and without. This I love this section. And
Yeah.
then I thought like it's just yeah, let's just make these kind of like things we can demonstrate in code.
Yeah. So what do you think of having this section right here, like right after this? Because it's okay, here's the before after, and then they're getting like, okay, but like, how can I see this in action? And boom, we see it in action.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Thinking about distinct chatbot capabilities, the ability to ask your user the next question to learn the most about them, the ability to predict how your user will answer given questions based on cohorts, the ability to place a user into a cohort with specificity, measured specificity, the ability to understand how your user is learning through the chatbot with measurement of epistemic emotions. Like those should all be things that a developer today is like, what the it's I don't do anything like that. Should I be doing that? And I think that's where we want people's
Yeah.
heads at.
Wait, what was so ability to predict how your chatbot will learn? Oh, will respond to a user. I'm just writing this down. The ability to place your user into cohort with measured specificity. based on belief systems. What were the other two that you named there?
Yeah, it was the next best question,
Yeah.
predicting the next answer.
Yeah.
Those are two. And the last one was the epistemic emotions to like measure
Mhm.
learning progress through a session.
And then ultimately, all of those things we're saying are difference makers to maximize learning rate for you as a team through this chatbot, but also make sure that it hyper personalizes recommendations and maximizes value to the user with their recommendations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that hyper personalized recommendation, as in this is you're building a recommendation system. This recommendation is hyper personalized. It's got a higher success rate of
Than
having the
anything else on the
recommendations be
market.
accepted, right, by the user.
I like that, how you just called it a hyper personalized recommendation engine, because I think that will grok with them is that's essentially what a chatbot is doing.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Like we basically be creating this new category of there are other recommendation engines, but ours is hyper personalized. I like that from a marketing create new category point of view. Cool. I
Yeah.
like that. I'll definitely change up this copy to reflect our differentiators. This part I need a lot of help with. So this is all our intern helped me with this.
Oh, can we just
Yeah.
go back to the
Oh,
positioning? Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, because I think we talked in the past about like the recommendation that fits the user is like a golden value proposition.
Yeah.
And then I think the other things we were talking about was like the hows of it, better questions, better answer prediction. Like those are like how you can make a better recommendation system. That's
Yeah.
how I've been thinking about it. And then I think there's also this vector of data enrichment we've been talking about, which I believe is a how that's underneath like the ability to deliver a better recommendation experience.
Yeah. I like that. I'm now imagining in my head a clear value prop that both approaches want to align on for the developer, which is recommendation that your user actually wants slash needs
Oh, there you
that
go.
they
Yeah.
like. Oh, did you like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That would actually be a great tagline. Recommendations that your user actually wants. And then under them would be the hows. And then we basically just destroy the current narrative with our hows being very different. How being hyper personalized recommendation engine, predicting the next best question, predicting the user's next answer, the ability to place your user into cohorts with quantified subjectivity and belief systems, the ability to get to epistemic emotions so we can ascertain and maximize learning rate. Cool. So I think I got that. I have a good visual in my head for how we'll change this. It's good feedback.
Cool.
Thanks
Yeah.
a
I
lot.
think that's really clean. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Thoughts on this section? This plug and play thing is not going to be it. I really would like this to be
The SDK playground.
PSP playground. Yeah. So consider that a placeholder for now.
Totally. Oh, and did you want to talk about how it works
Yeah, we could
or
just if you could just read this copy and tell me if anything looks glaringly wrong or if we could emphasize different things, that would be helpful.
yeah. I think raw user input, police enrichment, evaluation metrics, API output. Those are all kind of ways of saying how we were describing the SDK playground. And like,
Mm.
because I think the SDK
Yeah.
playground is that like training experience in a bottle. Just you can start off really easy. Yeah, I do think it's all about, yeah, like creating a data set, enriching it with user beliefs,
Yeah.
running the evaluations and improving the conversational prompts that are being used, and then exporting those out into your app so you can deploy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like the end-to-end value proposition there for the developer. Like, how do they seamlessly get this into like their sort of development flow so they can get the latest user conversations imported into this dashboard, train it so it's better, and then redeploy it so that they can then collect more data. And
Yeah. Honestly, like based on what you're saying, I think we just got a show here, right? Like the SDA playground all solves all of that. It basically is here, drop you right in, and you can see how easy it is.
This even leap
For
forward.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It just underscores how that's going to be core for us going to market more broadly.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think like storyboarding that user experience could both help the design and also be the way
Okay,
we want to present it.
yeah. Okay, sweet. I wrote that down in my notes to do. We could talk about that on the Wednesday call. Cool. So let's ignore this for now because we're just going to replace that. It's a placeholder. Okay, key features. I actually am now thinking. So actually, yeah, let's just look at this real quick. I think this one I'm sure of. I think I got to change this from real time metrics engine. I don't know. Maybe it's a different name. AI integration, multimodal support. This was like AI generated multimodal support. I don't think that's actually. I don't know. Do you think that's a differentiator for us? Should we call this out or should we call something else out?
Oh, I don't think it's a differentiator for us. I think it's just as the
A
model get
thing?
better, it'll be in all this, yeah, all the products.
Yeah. Anything jump out to you in this section?
Yeah, what's this section called again? The title? It's key
Key
features.
feature.
We just think about literally in terms of things you can do with API.
Yeah.
It's create a self model for each of your users,
Yeah.
and I think that's
Yeah.
appropriate because it's okay. I have a user model in my database, and then I can create a self model as a container for their belief ontology.
Maybe that's something like easily extend and enrich your user data, existing
Oh,
user data from here, something like that.
right.
Appropriate. Oh, dude, as I wrote that out, it's 4 E's in a row. Easily extend and enrich existing data.
Huh.
That's funny. That's a lot of alliteration.
That's good.
Alliteration. I'll play around with that. I like that. And then actually here we should probably write in hyper personalized recommendation engine and then subtext for predict the next best question based on your user's belief systems and the next best answer. Or
Cool.
their next answer. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that would be good. I could replace these two with that. This one, I think I'm going to change the name from real time metrics engine to real time epistemic metrics or something around the epistemic emotions. Or maybe that's really just no, yeah, something like that. I'll play around with it. But the
Yeah, I think
ones,
we have an interesting and unique value proposition with metrics because we can use these metrics in your evaluation pipeline, and then we can also use them to collect analytic data about users. And there's not a product that can say that I'm aware of today.
use metrics in your evaluation pipeline and for user cohort definition. Is that? Sorry, I'm just writing it
Uh,
down.
yeah, I think there's one bucket where it's metrics for evaluation tools. Another bucket is metrics for analytics tools. Of course, within the analytics tools, you could use it for a cohort definition, but you could also use it for click interactions to say the
Yeah.
user took this action and that corresponded with this habit that they have or this belief that they hold.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Along the lines of the belief ontology mapping is just like the transparency and explainability of the prediction models.
Okay. I like that. Okay. Cool. Anything else on this?
I also think along those lines about explicit learning models.
Okay. Tell me more.
It's just is a kind of a philosophy here of modeling the beliefs within an epistemology, which has an ontological representation. And like when you have a transparent and explainable ontology, and you can see like relative entropy and just disambiguation happening within the ontology, you have a transparent learning system. And so that makes it easier for you to hypothesize how to improve the system and help it to learn better. These are some of the classic like benefits of symbolic systems over neural networks as well. Like it's also something where if you're using neural networks, you can't do it. So it's helpful.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I got to think of some other way to explain that to our ICP, but I get what you're saying. Basically, our how helps you learn faster about your users. And it's our approach with these modeling the beliefs within an epistemology and a transparent ontology so that they could evolve hypotheses faster. Maybe that's it. Evolve hypotheses faster.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's
That's
cool. This is my value here, Jonathan. Cool. All right.
And for
Yeah.
feature sets also like we have the being able to create a belief system from a data set. Like we have some example apps where we started to do that, but I think that it's a concrete idea of what you can do with the system. Say,
Yeah. Yeah. I think when they get to this point, this is like a roundup. The Escape Playground should get them introduced to that self-modeled bootstrapper. And then here we can reinforce it. I have to think bootstrap is actually a word developers really get. So
yeah,
I'll think about that. But I see what you're saying. Let's add that here. Cool. Anything else on this section?
I'm looking at our swim lane diagram right now, and
Yeah. Tell me.
let's see. I'll read the high level like descriptions we put in.
Yeah.
Developer creates a user with a default params. See the data structure. Developer creates a self model and a belief system for a user. Developer creates a default dialectic with the user. A developer creates a self model for an AI coach. And that's one where we talk about importing data to create the self model, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Developer creates a dialectic with a user and an AI coach that learns about the user. And developer trains dialectic possibilities with a user and an AI coach that learns about the user. But yeah, I think we're touching on most of those. I just wanted to jog my memory a little bit.
Yeah. It's always helpful to go back to artifacts we've put some time into. Yeah, I think we are touching on all that. SDK Playground is so necessary, man. I think that's going to be the key of the website.
Yeah.
So we got to get that done. Good thing we're working on it. This, actually looking at this now, I think I need to move this. I need to delete this, actually, probably. It just doesn't look super clean.
Yeah. There's something we can say there.
Yeah.
Which has to do with philosophy and development, but I don't know that we need to say it. I don't know.
It could be nice to say it, just because it's like a sprinkle. But like the padding needs to be different. This looks like clean. So I'll change that.
Yeah. Like the way I think about this is that pragmatic philosophy can be really additive to develop for AI development.
Yeah. Okay. This section is really hitting at the philosophy nerds out there that would read this and be like, oh, this is for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This section is all like intern generator right now. I would love this to be the AI Brian use case once we actually can have that case study up. Right now, it's like kind of a placeholder.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this, I wanted the developer to really see what does this actually mean to their users. And that, at the end of the day, developers just want to make great tools for their users. And so this section is more like, this could be your tool. These could be your users serving this value to your users. So this is what I was going for in this section.
Cool. Yeah, I love that idea. I'm reminded when I was hearing Peter Diamandis pitch his like personalized Zora AI coach that like was a user at dinner saying, I know what to select from this menu that I can eat and will make me healthy. And I wonder if there's like health use cases we could pull out that are just really poignant like that.
Yeah, like
Uh,
basically, if I knew what most people were asking Zora or any of these AI health coaches, then we could just plug in quotes that mirror that experience. Yeah, because then the developer would be knowing, like, oh yeah, my users are asking me this kind of stuff all the time, or these are that most of my users' general goals with the AI health coach. I could ask Zach for his AI health coach what they're getting asked. So no,
yeah, he mostly focused on weight loss with
yeah,
doctor programs. I like confidence in what my AI coach told me what to eat or something like that. But these are fun to imagine, like with
yeah, they
like
are.
the most resonant value propositions and what a human could walk away with from the highly personalized experience, what that would look like. I think we should, yeah, we should picture that. Not that you might have some really good ones in here, by the way. They just keep flying by so fast that I'm just like, not
Oh,
fully engaging.
that's even good feedback. Maybe I should give some more time.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're
I'll
pretty
write that
quick.
here. Okay, cool. This section I really like. I loved this. It really shows the before narrative and
Yeah.
after narrative.
Yeah, this is really good.
I tried to have one for diet, sleep, and exercise, and then I had two for AI alignment, like oriented. Hey, like these are more about personalization in particular. Like here, I'm worried that AI health advice will be too generic, just like everything else I've tried. I actually got that from the conference. Somebody said that to me. So I was like, I'm stealing that, throw it here.
Yeah. So many people have just taken a GPT and tried to
Yeah.
make it a health coach, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just like a standard wrapper.
Yeah.
And I actually got this idea, this from when I was modeling that MindMate app of, oh, I like the visuals or feelings. And so I was like,
Right.
oh, cool. Like we show visuals of feelings to the developer. Because this is like a really key differentiator in our approach, I would say, to get to that. How do we get recommendations your users actually want?
Yeah. There has been like a set of demos, even since I remember as early as like 2017, seeing where in real time, like visual AI would judge people's emotions from their faces, or and then they have this like little bar of that look like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that I triggered on as it was described was,
Mm.
and because the epistemic states come across as I'm what is the emotional states, and it might require more explanation, just like what epistemic states means.
Yeah. Let me write that down.
There's some really like they all have a I guess a description underneath them too. Conflict between knowledge and preference, self awareness, recognizes personal limits.
Yeah. But I think that would be like, I think right here, we could maybe have a line for what this is used for. So
Mhm.
the developer understands what it's used for, epistemic states, to just keep drilling in that message that this is a differentiated approach.
Yeah, and
Because they might not
um,
inherit that this is used for this. Yeah. I'll add
and we could
subtext.
like brand a certain set of personalization metrics and just keep on using that language over and over again, like user cohort identification. Like we just use that all over the place, and
Yeah.
the epistemic emotions and the belief verification. And so, yeah, there's probably a few dozen things we can measure, but I'm specifically working with like about a dozen of them right now as I build the metrics for the evaluation
We server work
docs.
like on the just through Slack. So I have the top 12 and then I can pick from there and just create a single threaded narrative throughout the site. That'd be good. Ah, cool.
These are all the ones except for the epistemic emotions. Cool. Yeah. I, because I see a clear like value proposition chain from the personalized recommendation system.
Yeah.
You as a developer can build great personalized recommendation systems. Then there's a layer, then there's a evaluation tool chain that enables that. And then sitting underneath that, within that is the metrics.
Yeah. I like that. Okay. This part's standard, but I have links to all of our stuff. This is right now advertised as built in public updates written by me. So this links to the Substack embed for now.
Cool.
Yeah. And then I put in our data model for belief systems. This one, most people that I've sent this to, like developers like Zach, Justin, they really like this one. They like grok it more.
All right.
Yeah. And here, links to our open source intake. Oh, and then I thought this is cute. The future of AI alignment is epistemic me. Yeah, I like it too. And then for this is like use case vetting. So if people want to do an enterprise engagement with us, we could vet.
Oh, is that what that is? Interesting.
Yeah, because I figure like somebody might go to this and be like, I want custom services and I want your help implementing this.
Yeah.
And so I want to have a way for converting that interest. So I have some vetting for this. Like
Yeah.
in particular, one, what's your team's current level of technical readiness? I think that will help us.
Yeah. It's specifically the data set and data enrichment conversation is of interest there. Like
Yeah.
we have a mature data set and we just want to layer on personalization, or that'd be an ideal customer for enterprise.
Okay. Yeah, let me add that to the form.
Yeah. I really like that
Yeah,
quote. The only problem is that Brian started off his documentary with it, and we are reference "Don't Die."
might be too much mirroring, you think?
Probably. I think even if one or two people called me out on it, and I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, I thought it first," but
You don't want to do that from much conversation in the first place.
yeah. Or what if Brian checks out our page?
Yeah,
I'd be
that's
like,
yeah.
I use that quote on my Netflix special.
Maybe he'd be like, we should give these people more money. That'd be the ideal case. Cool. And then I put Dean. Dean liked this founding member technical advisor. So got that down, locked in.
Great.
Sweet. I think that's great feedback. That was a good session, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, this is really impressive. You got this done over the weekend.
Yeah.
Drafted and deployed.
Lovable, like secret weapon, dude. Yeah. And I have the MindMate mobile app like going, and I'm like, dude, this is gonna be my tool to just fucking ship quickly. I'm pretty stoked about it. And I even with Lovable, I even fed it accessibility standards, and I was like, make sure it meets all accessibility standards, and
Wow. Nice.
just got work with it. And dude, there's so many good tools nowadays. It's wild. The goal is just keeping up with all of them and like, staying on the edge and just keep getting an edge over everything. Yeah, there's so much. Cool. I think we'll wrap here. That was a lot of building public updates. Before I wrap, Jonathan, any final words or thoughts for the audience? Or public up?
No, that was fun. So we had some critical path deliverables iterated on live today. That was good.
SDK Playground, man. It's going to be the core of all of it, I think.
Yeah.
Really, it's going to be the core to when we eventually go product-led growth motion, but then also just to get more conversions, like we want the developer to play with it and really get an understanding of the value before they like go pull anything down on GitHub. That's really key. Cool. But I'm also happy, like in the interim before it's done, which will probably be the next couple weeks or 3 weeks or so. This is like a new sort of business card to send people, which is great. So I'll start testing it out with different audiences. That'll be fun.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks everybody for listening to our Build in Public update with Epistemic Me. You have been awesome for listening this far, and we will catch you next time. Thanks a lot, Jonathan, for joining me, and thanks for all the gold feedback. We'll do an iteration on that. And so everybody on the podcast audience, you'll probably see a very different website when this podcast shifts. Have a great day. Take care.